It's time now for the World Brief and a review of some headlines from today's newspapers. Now, let me tell you what's happening around the world. Now, during the first major trip of his second administration, it's a three-country stop, and US President Donald Trump has agreed to lift sanctions on Syria and has also signed a $142 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia. Trump said the US had no stronger partner than Saudi Arabia, and in addition to that multi-billion-dollar arms deal, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman said other investments from the US could eventually be worth $1 trillion. Now, Trump did take a group of corporate leaders, which included Elon Musk, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, and NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang, who did announce during the visit that NVIDIA will sell more than 18,000 of its latest AI chips to Saudi company Humane. Now, putting the business to one side, Trump's arrival in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday was met with a grand reception, including a lavish lavender-coloured carpet rolled out to greet him. He even had chosen a purple tie to match it. Now, Riyadh swapped red carpets for lavender back in 2021, saying that it was a symbol of the kingdom's desert wildfires and generosity. Now, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman met Trump on the tarmac and provided an honour of guard of Arabian horses to accompany his presidential limo. Now, if we cast our minds back to 2022, when former President Joe Biden visited Saudi to seek their help in lowering petrol prices, his welcome was arguably muted in comparison to what we saw yesterday. Now, that visit came 2 years after he actually declared Saudi Arabia a pariah state following the murder in 2018 of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in Istanbul from within the Saudi embassy. Now, Trump does fly on to Qatar and the United Arab Emirates later on this week, though he does remain in Saudi now. Back to the United States, and during the second day of evidence in the Sean Combs sex trafficking trial, his former partner, Cassie Ventura, who is 8 months pregnant, spent about 6 hours on the witness stand, alleging that she was degraded and sexually abused for years. Now, the prosecution's star witness testified about the alleged physical and emotional abuse she endured at the hands of the rapper during so-called freak-offs, or some sexual encounters the couple had with male escorts. Now, 38 years old, she said that when she met Combs when she was 19, I believe, when she was 19 years old, their decade-long relationship began soon after she signed a 10-year, 10-album record deal with his record label, Bad Boy. Now, she went on to testify that Mr. Combs wanted to control her life, saying that he paid for her home, her cars, her phone, and other technology that he would sometimes take away to punish her. Eventually, she claimed the control turned violent, testifying that Combs would bash on her head, knock her over, drag and kick her frequently. Now, Ms. Ventura also said that sometimes the abuse would continue, essentially. She also alleged that she was left with swollen lips and black eyes and knots on her forehead. Diddy has denied any wrongdoing, and the trial does continue later on today with Cassie Ventura's testimony entering its second day. Finally, Uruguay's former president, Jose Mujica, a one-time Marxist guerrilla and flower farmer whose radical brand of democracy, plain-spoken philosophy, and simple lifestyle fascinated people around the world, has died. He was 89 years old. Now, his death was announced by the current Uruguayan president, Yamandu Orsi, who called Mujica a president, activist, guide, and leader. Mujica had been under treatment for cancer of the esophagus since spring 2024, when the disease was first diagnosed. Now, during his 2010 to 2015 presidency, Mujica was widely known as Pepe. He oversaw the transformation of his small South American nation into one of the world's most socially liberal democracies. He earned admiration at home and cult status abroad for legalizing marijuana, as well as same-sex marriage, enacting the region's first sweeping abortion rights law, and establishing Uruguay as a leader in alternative energy. He sparked global fascination by shunning the presidential palace to live in a tiny farmhouse and donating most of his salary to charity, which is why they often refer to him as the world's poorest president.
I'm very noble. I remember when the late President Nelson Mandela died, and he left about $4 million in his estate, and most African leaders were shocked. They couldn't believe that he'd left such little, in political circles terms, to us $4 million is a lot. But I suppose, you know, on the scale of the type of leader that he was, 4 million was not what people would have expected. So I think I always do commend these leaders who lead by example, cut the coat according to their sizes, and realize that leadership is about service, not about the accumulation of wealth. Now, to Donald Trump, as we talk about wealth and the $600 billion deal from Saudi Arabia. And I went through the White House fact sheet. What the White House fact sheet depicts doesn't actually add up to $600 billion, but I'm assuming that, you know, with all other things considered, it comes up to $600 billion. Is it a victory for Donald Trump? Well, I don't know, because his target was $1 trillion.
Right.
$600 billion is massive for any country on earth, but his target was specifically $1 trillion, and we know that Donald Trump doesn't like to lose. But what's inside it? Besides the $142 billion arms deal, we're looking at about $20 billion for the construction of AI centers. There's billions in healthcare. There's billions in the in American services being used to build some airports and some other strategic infrastructure within Saudi Arabia. So the deal is very much a win-win deal. Now, what took my attention at this particular outing was what is becoming, for me personally, one of Donald Trump's trademarks, which is that he muddies the waters a lot. So he's a man that you can despise in one breath, and then the next moment he does something that excites you.
Right.
Yesterday, Donald Trump's speech excited me because he spoke about the victory of interventionism. He spoke about the importance of respecting nation sovereignty, not getting involved in the politics of countries, not tying aid to policy direction in countries. And it was more or less an anti-globalist speech, which a lot of people felt this is a breath of fresh air, and unlike anything we see from an American president. But when you look at the body language, it's actually very much, shall I call it, traditional, conventional American foreign policy, because this is how the Marshall Plan started. The post-World War II order was created by America saying, okay, there's a bunch of countries that need help. We're going to come in with our money and we're going to rebuild. So for me, it's interesting to see how he will fuse this foreign policy, because we've already seen that there is a degree of intervention under him. How will he fuse this with this need to come into countries like Syria to rebuild? We see there's a need to go into Ukraine, not just to take resources, but to rebuild. So it's very much classic post-World War II. Very quickly on Syria, now it seems that I guess he's the latest president of Syria, al-Shara, was given advice that if you want to get a good deal from Donald Trump, you want to be removed from the sanctions list, make sure you offer him a Trump Tower in Damascus. So it is believed that part of the deal for sanctions to be lifted off of Syria will be the concession of some land in order for a Trump Tower to be constructed. So like I say, he muddies the waters quite a bit, Donald Trump, but it will be quite an intriguing journey to see how this Middle Eastern trip that excludes Israel and Gaza will roll out, and how Benjamin Netanyahu will also receive this outreach to his neighbors, and many of whom he's not in very good terms with.
Thank you.
Okay. President Trump's 4-day trip to the Middle East is visiting Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE, those three countries.
Yes.
Now, it's economic diplomacy. It's supposed to be a deal-making trip. A transactional, trip to the Middle East. Now, out of this, Israel is not included, which means that perhaps the president is more interested in the Gulf states. Now, about 20 agreements are on the table to be signed between Saudi Arabia and the United States. The one that has attracted attention is the 144 billion arms deal, set by the White House to be the largest investment in terms of defense spending in the history of the United States. Now, the prince is offering about $600 billion in investment in the U.S. It was Trump teasing him, saying, oh, make it $1 trillion. However, these are the issues. This is a first trip to the Middle East by the president. He visited Saudi Arabia first when he came during his first time. But this time, he first went for the Pope burial, and now he's gone again, putting Saudi Arabia first. They are historic allies. Now, what are the issues here? This investment is in the area of justice, oil, defense spending, and all of that. So it looks on the surface of it a win-win for Donald Trump. And for those Democrats back home in the US, this is a way of telling them that, well, he seems to know what he's doing in terms of putting America first. So the other thing that Trump will put on the table is oil. Saudi Arabia is the largest producer of oil within the OPEC Plus. And President Trump had been asking for lower energy costs. Now, OPEC Plus, the 8 leading countries there, had increased production levels by about 600,000 barrels per day till June. That is what has crashed oil price. For how long can Saudi Arabia sustain that? But for now, we see the triumph of diplomacy, Trump diplomacy. Number two, what is in it for Prince Mohammed bin Salman? Now, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, as of 2018, was very unpopular in the United States because, U.S. intelligence reports indicated that he had a hand in the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist. But this time around, it's a different kind of atmosphere. You could see that the prince himself was animated, he was smiling, and he enjoyed the fact that he was rubbing shoulders and discussing with BlackRock CEO, SpaceX and Tesla CEO, Elon Musk, and all these Americans. And it was, from the point of view of diplomacy, it's a win-win for both countries. Now, the president is going to go to Qatar. From Qatar, he's going to go to the UAE. Now he's not going to Israel. Israel is significantly omitted. Now, in terms of transaction, you will see that those 3 countries that President Trump has chosen are also countries where the Trump organization has investments. They are building a high-rise in Jeddah, this same Jeddah. They are building a luxury hotel in Dubai, and they are building an estate in Qatar. So apart from America first, there's also, in my view, what you may call Trump first. But in terms of diplomacy, it seems to be getting good reviews. Now, to Jose Mujica, the world's poorest president, as he is called. Now, he disagrees that he's the world's poorest president. But the reason people were calling him that was because when he became president in 2010, he refused to move into the mansion. He remained in his modest home outside Montevideo. That was where he was living. He was riding a 1987 light blue model of Volkswagen, which was shown on the screen there. The salary that he was paid, he gave most of his salary away. And anytime people call, and he dressed casually. He drove himself. In fact, in his house, his personal home, from where he ruled Uruguay for 5 years, he had no domestic help. He just had very minimal security. And he used to say that he's not the world's poorest president. It's just that people cannot manage their greed. That other people are so greedy, they are involved in the race to acquire. But that he is not a part of that race. And then he says he thinks that it's the world that is crazy. Because, he's not a poor man because he was living very simply. By the time he left government in 2015, his popularity rating was above 70%. And it was noted, apart from his simplicity, for the social reforms that he introduced, the legalization of the medical use of marijuana, the legalization of abortion, the recognition of same-sex relationships. These were some of the reforms that he brought. But you made a point about his background.
Yes.
Starting as a guerrilla. He was one of the founders of a group called the MLNT, which was resisting the authoritarianism of government at that time. And as a result of that guerrilla group, when the military took over in Uruguay in 1973. He was in prison. In fact, he spent cumulatively 14 years in prison. And the military rulers that came, they said, in fact, he will be one of the 9 persons they will execute if there was any other guerrilla attack. But later, there was a return to democracy. And when it was freed in 1985, and there was a return to democracy, first, I think he started as a member of parliament. He was in the House of Representatives. He was in the Senate. Eventually, when the leftist coalition came to power, he was made a minister, and he was a minister until he became president in 2010 at the age of 74. And he was president at a time the left was in a triumphant mood in Latin America, when you have Lula da Silva in Brazil, and you have Hugo Chavez in Venezuela. So he's remembered for his simplicity. I hope that other leaders of the world will learn from the example of Jose Mujica to know that it's not by acquiring, by engaging in a race to amass wealth that you provide leadership. That simplicity is required. He is remembered for what he did, for his service, not for his wealth. And he says he is not poor. There is other people that are crazy. What is the last topic now?
I think you covered all of them.
Sean Diddy Combs?
Of course.
Okay,
of course.
well, very briefly on that, since the trial started on May 5. I think it's very unfortunate that a man who became one of the wealthiest musical artists in the world, 3 Grammy Awards, 3 BET Awards, Walk of Fame, personality. In fact, at the time, he was known for his parties, white parties, they called it. If you didn't go to Diddy's party, it would look like you were part of the cultural happening class, in the United States. And then now, he has this issue about his swingers lifestyle and sexual abuse, sex trafficking and all of that. And this lady, Ventura, Sisi, who was with him for about 8 years, said she was subjected to abuse and all of that. She has since moved on. She married in 2019. She has 2 children with her husband. In fact, she's carrying another baby. She's pregnant. But this is a reminder of, the risks involving stardom. How stars may be talented people, but they are also very vulnerable people. But, the trial has started. The jury is already hearing the case. Well, he's facing, if found guilty, life imprisonment.
Yes, these are very serious charges.
It's unfortunate that a man can rise so high and fall so badly in public estimation.
All righty, well, let's move on to newspaper headlines across Nigeria. Let's start as ever with the front page of This Day. This Day does lead with Sule Lamido, the former governor of Jigawa, asking President Bola Tinubu to pay the 45 billion naira allegedly owed by the federal government to the family of the late MKO Abiola. He said this in Abuja on Tuesday at the public presentation of his memoir titled Being True to Myself. Now, the former governor asked Mohammed Idris, who is the Minister of Information, who was representing the president at the event, to convey his demand to the president. He said that the debt was for contracts executed for the Ministry of Communication. The New Telegraph this morning leads with the House of Representatives on Tuesday rejecting a constitutional amendment bill aimed at introducing the principle of rotational presidency for the offices of the president and vice president across Nigeria's 6 geopolitical zones: North Central, Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, South-South, and Southwest. Now, the bill, sponsored by Deputy Speaker Benjamin Kalu, was dropped during plenary session, which was presided over by the Deputy Speaker. Now, in addition, the House also voted against a bill seeking to amend the 1999 Constitution to remove INEC's powers to register and regulate political parties. Now, that's a story also picked up on today's Leadership newspaper. The Daily Sun, however, does lead with the leadership of the Christian Association of Nigeria, otherwise referred to as CAN, in the 19 northern states and the Federal Capital Territory, raising concerns bordering on national security, religious freedom, and institutional discrimination. This happened during a strategic interface with the National Security Advisor, Malam Nuhu Rubadu, in Abuja, which was attended by the Director General of the Department of State Services, Mr. Adiola Oluwatosin Ajayi, and the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, who's Ambassador Mohammed Mohammed. Now, in a 14-point communique, Khan commended the NSA's openness, but did warn of the ongoing spate of insecurity, marginalization, and systemic bias against Christians in the north, which they fear could inflame serious tensions and truncate the nation's fragile peace. Now, amongst a wave of stories on its front page, the Vanguard reports that the Presidential Campaign Council of Agege and Orile Agege came to loggerheads with the Speaker of the Lagos State House of Assembly, Mudashiru Obasa, and his group over the results of the party's primaries ahead of the July 12th local government elections. The party's primaries for all 20 local government areas and 37 local council development areas in respect of chairmanship and councillorship elections were held last Saturday at the party's State Secretariat in Ikeja. And finally, the Daily Trust does report on 4 soldiers killed in what it was called a renewed onslaught on Nigeria's military bases, unfortunately.
Okay, well, I hear there's no time for a chat, so I really wanted to chime in on some of those issues, but I hope we have another opportunity to do so. Adefemi, thank you.